Never heard of half of these guys. Ones I do know are way past their
These guys
prime.
never had a prime.
Here is dead.
Cross him off.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, it's the holiday season, and the Giants are giving gifts to every team that they play. How are you doing so far?
Good. It's really early.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person, so I've got my smiling is my favorite from the movie Elf shirt. So
Nice.
those who have not seen it, it's a classic. So I'm sure
I went with ugly Christmas Captain America sweater.
Yeah.
Close enough. Behind me is actually I have a New York Giants Christmas tree behind me. So it's all the branches are bright blue. Then we've got red garland white. I didn't want to put it on yet because it's not all decorated yet. But anyway, my wife bought it last year for me and put it up because my birthday falls in November. So they put it up for Christmas. So I like to have it in my office. Now, unfortunately, it's a very depressing holiday season as a Giants fan. So once again, we go into another game where we're not really breaking down the games because what is the point of that? But we are going to talk about the fact that breaking down is a very interesting term that we should talk about because the wheels are coming off the health of the New York Giants, and you've had a lot of roster changes this week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should bring up the injury list here because it's gotten long. I mean, what did they say yesterday? They said we have 3 players who are definitely out, and Banks, Nunez, Roches, who's ended up, as you've mentioned repeatedly, didn't really pan out as a free agent.
Yeah.
Okereke is out. So now we got both our starting defensive tackles are out because Dexter Lawrence is on injured reserve. He's done for the year. We have Okereke, our best middle linebacker, out. So our wonderful run defense is about to hit a new level of suck. If you're
For sure.
so,
For sure.
I know the Saints don't run the ball particularly well, but they will. They will this week. And then you got even DJ Davidson is doubtful, so the backups are out. So you've got their 3 top. Right, their 3 top defensive linemen are out. Well, so this is not going to be good. And then we even have Malik Neighbors once again is dinged up, and then you got the mess on the offensive line. So not only do we have our left tackle is on injured reserve, Andrew Thomas, but now Illuminor is doubtful, who's our right tackle, who was kind of playing left tackle, and that now his replacement, Hubbard, is questionable, as is Neal. So who the heck knows who's even going to be playing on the offensive line at this point? We may be grabbing guys off the practice squad to play on.
Which we have Tyree Phillips.
Right, and we have a couple other guys. God, I can't even keep these guys straight anymore. Yeah, isn't Josh Miles still on the practice squad? I believe so.
Might be.
Yeah,
I would like to see it at that point with some of that in mind. I'd like to see like Kubis get some time at either guard or center. Try him at both. I don't care. And maybe move. You might have to move. Runyon might have to go. Maybe have to play tackle. I think he's played briefly there before. His dad did. Maybe we could get lucky. Who knows?
Yeah, Josh Miles is on there. I could see them bringing him up or Phillips, depending on how healthy he is. Remember, he's coming off an injury that he suffered late last year. And then they've got a guard on the practice squad, Marcellus Johnson. So, yeah, the problem with Kubis, like you said, he's really a guard. So they're not really having issues at guard. It's more tackle. So
right, but I mean, you might as well play, you might have to move a guard out to tackle, and if you're going to do that, it won't be Kubis. It would be one of our veteran guards. But I'd like to see him play. Like, I mean, what difference does it make? Everything we've seen. I think it was Duggan. I don't know if you saw it. Was it Duggan or maybe it was Renan? I can't remember which one, so I don't want to quote either one. But they were basically talking about some of the Giants' moves right now might be more about the 25 season for guys that they've signed longer term. They mentioned Art Green as one of the guys and stuff. So they're going to play them to kind of get ahead on the futures contract and get them some playing time. But The bad part about that, when you're talking about the offensive line, though, is that poor quarterback has to come in and stand there, and you're basically putting Josh. That means Josh Azudu is going to be the left tackle again.
Well, and the other thing too is it makes you wonder, is this an indication that Shane is coming back? So again, there are a lot of personalities in the room, so maybe not necessarily, but they are picking guys off of waivers. They got the tight end from Denver. You know, they just picked up D Williams off of waivers from Seattle. So they are seen to have an eye to 2025. So who's the guy in the room looking at 2025?
Right.
So who knows? It depends on where you stand on that. Depends on what you think of Shane. So
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you want Shane gone, you might not like this. So
well, that's true. Before we turn our attention directly to that, because that's a great, because I do want to go there with what you said. Just for this game alone, let's forget the result. I think the result, dear God, I can't believe I am at the point now, and I'm like, I can't remember a time I've ever rooted for the Giants to lose. I've never wanted them to lose. Even watching the game on Sunday, when I watch the game on Sunday, I won't be actively hoping they lose.
Right.
I will be very fearful they might win, though. Because you've mentioned this a couple of times, not tied to the game, but you've mentioned it tied to Hard Knocks. And if certain people go back and watch Hard Knocks within the organization, and they see their point as being valid,
right,
that might actually justify we should have done something that actually is not. It's not the right answer for what the 25 Giants should have done. It's just, unfortunately, you didn't have an answer when you made those choices. They're going to look at it wrong. And I'm afraid a win might do the same thing to this
yeah,
group.
well, the thing is confirmation bias. You've talked about this before. So if you're John Mayer and Tim McDonald and you're watching Hard Knocks, you come around going, I mean, right now they look like the smart guys in the room, which may not be good. I'm not saying they're right, but again, we're in this messy situation, and Giants fans have fallen victim to this too. And again, they may not like me saying this, but some of the things that have backfired on the Giants still were probably the right thing to do. Moving on from Saquon was, given where the Giants was the right thing to do. It's just when they did it and how they did it was the mistake, as you and I have talked about previously before. You could have kept them away from Philadelphia, and they didn't do that, and they fell into that, and that's where John Mara looks like a smart guy in the room, because he predicted, gosh, I'd hate to see him end up in Philadelphia, and lo and behold, that's where he ends up. I mean, he said that before Philly was even in the picture. So the PR element of this spiraling out of control with Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, Leonard Williams, you just go down the list. It just looks bad, and it pours gasoline on the smoldering wreck that is the New York Giants this season right now. And it's really got fans, and understandably, pissed off. The last thing Giants fans want to see is Philadelphia looking like one of the best teams in the league, because Saquon Barkley is helping them become one of the best teams in the league. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Right. I think, what's really funny is, if things were different, meaning the last couple of years, maybe 8-9 years, if things had been slightly different, I think there would be a bigger burning fire to clear everybody out within the Giants organization, going, we got to clean this out. Because talk radio, whatever that is now, shows like ours, stuff like that, would be just spewing venom about, I can't believe what's happened to this organization, blah, 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 blah. It's become now where we just like it. There's those core fans like ourselves, which are talk about it and are kind of embedded. But like you keep bringing up, there's a younger group that just doesn't care. They don't give a shit. Like, this team hasn't won anything the entire time they've been alive. They don't care. They are not interested. And in a world, and I've included it already, I kind of did a write-up for this already, in a world of faster changing technology, of what have you done for me lately, of, oh, this is new, that's not new, moving on. The Giants have given every reason for people to believe this is your boomers team, right? This is the team I don't care about, whatever, who cares? They don't win, they're crap. You just love them because of, and I think the Giants keep grasping, and by the way, and I'll bring this up too. I didn't know if you know this or not. They keep grasping onto the 100-year history thing, this nostalgia, as if it representative of their current status in the NFL. And did you know that this weekend, once again, we have another celebration? It is the Frank Gifford bobblehead doll day. Did you?
I did not.
I
Actually,
heard that
maybe
yesterday.
because I've started to tune them out, which is sad because I run a website. I haven't noticed a lot of the 100th anniversary stuff, so I thought they were pulling back on that. So if they're still doing it, it's
The Frank Gifford's family is going to be there.
oh gosh,
It's the Frank
what
Gifford
a
bobblehead.
tribute!
I'm like,
What a tribute! The thing that you just said is something that we really need to dive into. And this has been true before Dable and Shane. This goes back to even when Reese was still here. This team still, in my opinion, and I alluded to this in the game preview, this team still has never fully, I feel, never fully committed to the rebuild. So they either, because of the situation at quarterback when Eli was here, or this clinging on to Daniel Jones, or Saquon Barkley or other players, it seems like they've still half-assed this. And again, we've talked about it over and over and over again, but the perfect example recently is the flip-flopping back and forth on what to do with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. They're going, they're staying, they're going, that kind of thing. And if somebody was going to come in here and say, we're like Shane and Dable, we thought we're going to do, and say, we're going to tear this down, we're going to build this back up, we're going to start. So you got the impression, strong impression in 2022 that Daniel Jones was on his way out. You got an inkling that Saquon might not be here either, but that wasn't as clear. But it started to become clear as we got closer to this year. Why they didn't pull the Band-Aid off and just start over is put them into this situation once again, where now the fan base has turned completely on them because of the way they botched this whole situation. So, as I said in the game preview, I think they've realized their mistake, but it may be too late. And again, Gettleman went through this, Reese went through this, all the different coaches we've had have done through this. They didn't quite start over, but they didn't quite make a run either. So it was like this. So meanwhile, we're stuck in this in-between state. And meanwhile, you're seeing other teams right now who have hired head coaches and are, again, we will have to see what they do moving forward. But look at Denver, look at the Commanders, look at some of these other teams in the league that look like that they've got the right people in place and are moving in the right direction. And they started over. They moved and they got a new quarterback and they're moving forward. And I feel like we still don't have any clarity of what's going on in the upcoming offseason. We may go into the next season with Shane and Dable still in charge, and now no one in our fan base feels good about these two.
Right. Before we talk about them specifically, one thing I wanted to talk about that you mentioned about there's this new kind of thought process with fans that you don't have to rebuild, you retool, and teams can change very quickly. And I agree with that. That's true. We've seen it in many areas. The big problem I have with the Giants about the rebuild, like you're mentioning, is the reason I think you can't pinpoint it and I can't pinpoint did we rebuild or not rebuild is for the very reason that there are two pieces of a rebuild. There's your actual roster, the players on your roster, and then there's your salary cap.
Yes.
We've never done both. We've gotten rid of some of the players, but we've still been bottom tier in cap space, which makes no sense to me. When you supposedly fixed the cap, we still were not that great. I'm looking at it right now, even for 25, which taken into account, we do have dead money, which I don't care about. That means nothing. But the cap space we have is all because we got rid of Jones. We cut him. So we saved money. But that's the only reason we have what we have. But at the top, you have the Patriots, the Raiders. They both have well over $100 million in cap space. The Cardinals, with a very expensive quarterback.
Right.
They have 106. The Commanders are next with almost 100, and they have their franchise quarterback.
Right, they're in a great shape. The Commanders are a perfect example because they basically went cheap in free agency as placeholders with veterans that they don't intend to hold on to, but they got their quarterback. So they got the young, inexpensive quarterback, as Cy keeps talking about, on his first year contract, and now they go into the offseason with $100 million to spend. And look at us.
And here's another example, another team that was kind of in the same boat we were in terms of cap space, who they signed, who they had on their roster. The only difference is they have a much better long-term quarterback, and that's the Chargers. The Chargers go and get a new coach.
Right.
They now have $76 million of cap space.
Wow.
That new coach,
They got more cap space than us, in other words.
more than us.
And they got
Have Herbert
at quarterback.
They got rid of Allen. They got rid of Williams.
This is what I'm talking about. What do we? Oh God!
And that's where I keep wondering, where the hell is all our cap money?
Where's our cap space? You know, I guess it's paying one of guys like Bobby Okereke and Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence and all that. But some of these guys, like Andrew Thomas, he's a really good player, but he can't stay healthy. So, I mean, that's a problem for the Giants moving forward. Andrew Thomas has basically stayed healthy 1 year. So no one wants to talk about that. Now Dexter's hurt now. So, and then we have spent money on free agents, and some of them are not looking so hot now. Some of it may be because of the coaching change. But like I said, look at the Chargers are a perfect example. You would think we would have more cap space than them, and we don't. Right. They have a better coach, they have a quarterback, and they got and look at their record, and they are going to be ascending, and we're still. If you said it, where's the bottom? Where's the bottom on the Giants? We keep going.
And for the Chargers, right? You probably can expect in the offseason, they'll probably cut that roster down a little bit more. I think Khalil Mack is probably going to end up going. He costs too much. Yeah. And then Bosa, who's constantly injured, his contract is just too much for them to continue. I think with Harbaugh in place, God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Go Terps has been very right about a couple of things that you have to have a coach, quarterback. The GM, I think he needs to just be in line with the organization. The coach and quarterback have to be on the same page. And if they're on the same page and that thing melds, then you can build around it. The Giants don't have that. They haven't had it in a while. You add the GM in, which where the cap comes into real big problems is when you start, and you've mentioned this more than once, when you have to sign veteran free agents, maybe to that 1 or 2 year deal, they're getting more money. Why are we giving them more money? Because the guys that we drafted, McKeithian, Azudo, those guys, they're not taking prominent roles where you could have a rookie undrafted free agent be the guard, who's in reserve waiting to come in. Instead, we've got Azudu and McKeithian, well, at least we did, on the roster. They were the backups because they weren't good enough to work their way into the lineup. So now you had to go sign another veteran and then another veteran. And then what happened? Last year, we had a couple of those veterans retired before the season started. But we already paid them money, so it counted on the cap against already. So then you had to go get more guys. So that's the problem. Our drafting has not really... We have not filled not only the stars, but we really haven't filled the lunch pail guys that are there week in, week out, and have really where we can build around.
So none of the offensive linemen have panned out that they've drafted. None of them. Even the guy picking the 7th overall pick, the guy drafted in the 2nd round at center. So this is what, again, I kind of try to point to in the game preview on the website is I'm not sure what we're hanging our hat on at this point. I want to stay. I don't want to change guys again. And it's interesting. You're seeing some people out there. Saw Justin Pugh tweet out, we got to keep these guys. Yes. They need to have another chance. He may be right. I don't know. But what are we hanging our hat on again? We're 2-10, 7 games we've lost in a row. We haven't won a division game, and we're not going to win a division game unless something weird happens in the week 18 and Philly doesn't need that game. But even if they play their backups we were playing a bunch of backups against Dallas and Dallas beat us. We're going to go winless in the division. We're horrible on offense. The last dead last in scoring. We're dead last in run defense in terms of yards per carry. What are we hanging our hat on at this point? Terrible defense, terrible offense. No one feels like we're out coaching anybody. And now the longer we go, the draft classes don't look so hot. So again, competency matters, as does staying the course. But if you're staying the course and you're incompetent, that's not good either. I'm starting to wonder if we go 2 wins this year, if we finish with 2 wins and we go into next year with Dable as a head coach, it just has this roof collapsing feel to me. I mean, even worse than this year. I've said this to you before offline. I feel like this season is didn't even really start. I feel like we haven't really had an NFL season. It feels like we got kicked in the nuts from the get-go and it just keeps going. And it feels like this hasn't even been a real football season. I'm kind of watching some other teams play occasionally, just to get my football fix. But watching the Giants is just terrible. I mean, I don't feel good after the game, and I'm supposed to be enjoying this. It's just terrible.
With what you just said, describing the kick in the nuts thing,
yeah.
I don't know if you'll even remember this, and I'm definitely going to be dating myself by saying this. Years ago on Johnny Carson, they had Buddy Hackett came out one time. Buddy Hackett started telling this story. It seems like he's telling an actual story, but it was a joke. And he was talking about there was hunting and he shot this duck and the duck landed on the roof of the guy's house next door. So he went over and he said, "Hey, I shot a duck and landed." He goes, "Well, it's in my yard." He goes, "Yeah, but I shot it." He goes, "Here's the deal. We'll take turns kicking each other in the nuts until one of us quits. And then whoever that is, the other person, you get the duck." He's like, "Okay." But he goes, "Because in my house, I get to go first." So he kicks. So Buddy Hackett falls on the ground. He's like, "Oh," he's rolling all over for a good 30 seconds. He's rolling on the ground, screaming, crying, whatever. He gets up. He goes, "Okay, it's my turn." And the guy goes, "Nah, you can have the duck." And that's what I feel like this season has been for the Giants. Like, you just keep waiting. Okay, we get to hit back. Oh, no, I guess we don't. It's like there's really literally the joy of this season will be Black Monday after the last game, and that might get yanked away when we realize the two bozos behind me are coming back. And I'm really starting to get the feeling that the landscape of who's available out there isn't as deep as some people thought. And I think there's going to be more teams looking for coaches than there really are. Like, the top guys are going to be able to choose wherever they want to go. They're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw one of my 3 questions randomly in there. The 2 guys behind me, married together, both come back, both leave, or are you okay if one comes back and one leaves? What do you think and what do you want?
That's the $1 million question. Look, when Dable came in and had his coach of the year season, I felt great about our coach. And people are going to say, "Well, you don't feel great now because he's 2-10. Of course you don't feel." But I feel like he's going through the motions. His press conferences to me are uninspiring. Not that's real critical, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of fight in this team anymore. And I don't think the team's responding to him. And I don't see, it's kind of like Colin came on earlier this week, and he was talking about how badly he feels this team is coached. And Cy is
he was pretty direct about that.
And Cy has kind of commented on that before too. And the problem I have is how often does, like, the situation at quarterback and now the falling apart offensive line affect what you're doing? Because there are the times when you see comments like, "Wow, the Giants really had some interesting, innovative play design with their passing routes, but the quarterback missed the receivers." I get all that. But looking at the big picture, I just see it's what you talked about: 9-7-1, 6-11, now 2-10. We're going in the wrong direction. It's year 3. There doesn't seem to be any confidence. There doesn't seem to be any fight in this team, and I don't like that. I don't feel like there were times last year towards the end of the year when, again, we were really, really beat up and we had issues at quarterback and the offensive line was a disaster. But there were times when we went into games and we were at least competitive and we were fighting and we stole some games we shouldn't, which ended up hurting us because we lost the quarterback. But we're not even getting that now. So right now, where I feel right now as December 7th, it's Pearl Harbor Day. It's yeah, I didn't realize that. December 7th, I feel like I don't want Dable back. I feel like unless something really, and I don't see, he's got 5 games left, which in a way is kind of an eternity. That's the other thing. We've got a lot of football left. 5 games is a lot of football. It's not like we're at the end of December here. But right as of today, I don't want Dable back, and I'm increasingly okay with letting Shane go because I think the two are kind of tied at the hip. But like you said, who's out there? But I don't want to settle for what we have still. I don't want to
Right.
settle for somebody out there, but I don't want to settle, keep the guys that we have because we said, well, there's nobody better out there. I think there's always interesting guys. One thing I know I'm rambling, but one thing I think is interesting is look at the retreads this year, the Jim Harbaughs and the Sean Paytons. Some people say you don't want to go with retread route, but those two guys show that you can still find guys that have been around the league and still know what the heck they're doing. So I've said before the reason why I thought Bill Belichick could still be in the picture was because John Mara might be pulling his hair out about I can't pick young guys. I've got to get somebody safe. So that's but who's out there who's safe? I saw somebody mention Nick Saban on the website.
Yeah, I was like, dear God.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, we're a decade too late on that one.
That ship sailed way back.
Yeah.
Way
And
back.
didn't someone mention Bill Cowher on the site?
I did jokingly. I started
Yeah.
when they said that. I said, "Well, why don't we go Bill Cowher?" I started picking
Yeah.
people. I think Marv Levy's still alive. Let's see what he's doing.
Marv Levy's still not alive, is he?
I think he is. Is he like pushing a? I thought he was.
I
pushing
don't know,
100.
but
I'd have to look it up. Geez, I hope not. I hope. I mean, I hope he is. That'd be bad if I thought. I thought he was, but maybe not.
I know
Either
Abe
way.
will go to finally kick the bucket. Anyways, all right.
But here's something which I wasn't going to touch on, but you mentioned his name, so I will. So Bill Belichick has supposedly talked to the University of North Carolina. One of the conditions that he mentioned to the and I'm beginning to wonder a couple things. One, is he talking to a college team? Is it just sort of a thing and they made a big deal about it because they want interest? But clearly it's being reported that he did do it.
Yeah.
Or is the landscape of his options much smaller than we all thought? And I think age is a huge deal.
A big factor, yeah.
But also the idea that he has to have control, that's got to rub some teams the wrong way. And his last few years, once Brady left, he did some bizarre crap. Like his coaching staff was really weird.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was being obstinate about stuff. He was like intentionally doing stuff for whatever reason. That being said, the rumor is, or the word is, he met with the University of North Carolina, and one of the conditions he would have is his son needed to be the coach in waiting. Could that also be something he floated out there on purpose for NFL teams to know as well?
Yeah, sure. So, and that may scare teams away too.
Not the Giants. I bet you that might entice them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to see that. This is the ugly situation the Giants are in. It's what you hit the nail on the head. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you want to do with Dable and Shane too. But there's a lot of teams looking for coaches. There are a lot of teams that have already fired their coaches, so they have a jump start on us. And you've mentioned this before, and other people have mentioned this before. This is not as an attractive destination as it used to be. So the luster has kind of gone off this team. And part of it is I think the Giants, even when they were bad, still had the reputation of being somewhat stable in this sense that they would stick with a head coach and a GM. I mean, it was unheard of for the Giants to fire a GM forever. And now we're firing GMs and we're firing head coaches every 2 to 3 years now. And so if I'm a young up and coming coach and I've got a number of different options, some of them with young quarterbacks already in the building, and I'm looking at the Giants aren't very stable right now. They keep firing people and this is the downside to, I hope fans understand this. We have a lot of fans that say, fire everyone. And again, you're hearing it from me now too, fire Dable. But there is a downside to firing people because you're starting all over, but you're also showing that your franchise isn't particularly stable.
Right.
What we all want, and everyone's starting to realize how special a situation this is what Tomlin is doing in Pittsburgh. I mean, he has just been a rock.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not winning Super Bowls every couple of years, but my goodness, they're always competitive and
but they could, they could, right? They could. They're always in the mix
Right.
Even their down years are winning seasons.
Right. And they don't have a good situation at quarterback, which is shows you it can be done.
Right.
You can get. It's not like the old days when they had Roethlisberger in there in his prime. They're kind of using a Band-Aid approach right now at quarterback, and they're still winning. So it shows you it can be done. But Pittsburgh is one of those teams that when you play them, you feel like you've played a football game. You're playing a physical, smart, tough football team. You go into Pittsburgh and you win a game there, you feel like you've done something. The Giants can't win a home game now. They can't. I mean, we're winless at home. That's disgusting. And we've been bad at home for a decade, but we've hit rock bottom now.
Right.
I mean,
well, you said something about Pittsburgh, right? What is Pittsburgh always known for?
Defense.
Physically tough. Their defense is going to keep them in games, even if their offense struggles. They will be in everything because you are going to have to fight them no matter what.
They're going to hit you. They're going to hit you.
When you think of the Giants over the last 10 years, what are they? Yeah, I mean, that's true, but I can't come up with what they are. We're not a good defensive team. We're not like year in and year out. We don't have a system that we've kept in place. The Steelers have a system. I guess it helps when your coach stays, so that I know that's obvious, but the coach kept the system, but that system functions no matter who the players are. The Giants constantly are jumping around trying to find something and then either mashing the players that they have into it, or they're trying to get players that they can put a new system in. And this is where, to go with the same question you had, I'm going to answer the question now. This is where I've now completely fallen off from Daboll. This is your team. This is your offense. You put this in. You brought in Kafka, and then you booted him out of the way because you said you needed to be the play caller. Every bit about this team offensively is you, and I don't know what we are. We're not a good passing team. You can blame the quarterback, but you picked them. You kept them.
Yeah.
And then you told everybody all season long, and you and I talked about this like you were a freaking, like there's a gun behind you and you're going, Daniel Jones gives us the best chance to win. Well, it's really weird when you keep saying that and then you yank them and you put the guy who was third string, which again, I know I called for that because it didn't make sense to go to Locke because who cared? Locke's not going to be here next year. So, but when you did it, you come off disingenuous about everything you had said before that. To me, that's where you lost everything. You have to keep credibility. I do not. I'm not the coach. I can say I'd rather have Tommy DeVito play because I'm not the guy who stands in front of all those people in the locker room after I've told them that the other guy is the best chance to win. He did. And then you went away from it. And you went so far away from it, you booted him off the team, which is embarrassing about how you handle it. I don't care about Daniel Jones. He should have been gone already. But it was embarrassing how we ultimately did that because you kept going out there week after week after week talking about he's the guy. Brian Daboll's offense isn't the only reason I think he should go. Brian Daboll has had almost no connection with his coaches as far as I can tell. We've gone through multiple coaches, assistant coaches with him.
Multiple.
It can't always be, at some point Captain Kirk has to take responsibility for the ship. You can't go, that's Scotty's fault. That's Uhura's fault. That's Sulu. I could go through all the names. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, you're the captain. And to me, he has to take the fall here because...
Well, he's picked the guys. He's hired these people.
Right. Too. The Bowen thing, I think, to me, and I brought this up more than once, it's the Bowen that ties this all together.
Yeah.
His embarrassing behavior on that, and I know it's a reality show, but that was stupid. That was really stupid. And even worse is when you highlighted Bowen, you let him talk in an environment where he talked about Isaiah Simmons, who at the time wasn't even signed to the team yet. He was a free agent. And yet you're talking about how you're going to use him. Fast forward to here. How many impact plays other than a special teams block, which has nothing to do with Bowen, has Isaiah Simmons made on defense? None.
Right. They're not even using them.
Your run game stuff that you highlighted, look at where they ranked. We're dead at the bottom. Rico Dowdle got his only 100-yard game playing against us behind a makeshift offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys. Our team sucks. Everything that Daboll has put together has backfired.
That's what I mean. That's where I'm at. It's like, so what are you hanging there? What can you point to right now that you say we need to bring him back. There isn't anything to hang your hat on and say, well, they're playing hard or they're getting better or there's been extenuating circumstances. There's nothing like that. So say I have an agenda. Say I'm like related to Dable. I
Sure.
can't come up with a reason to lobby for him because so that's where I'm at with him. And the one thing that bothers me, and I've seen fans do this, and I've seen reporters do this, is let Shane and Dable pick their own quarterback before you get rid of them. Well, they did pick their own quarterback.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
re-signed Daniel Jones.
Can't
Now,
argue
there
that.
are people out there that say, no, they didn't. John Mara did that. I don't know. I really don't know if that's the case or not. I've speculated that may be the case. If it was, maybe they're tragic figures at this point. I don't know, but at some point you also have to say to the owner, as strongly as you can, no, I'm telling you, I will not accept this. So they picked their quarterback. They hitched their wagon to this guy, and I talked about it months ago. They may not never be able to overcome that, and and I think Dable's probably not going to be able to overcome it. The question is, can Shane overcome it? I will say this too is you mentioned this. If we get into January and we're 2-win team and they say they're both coming back, I'm not going to feel very good about this. I'm just going, I'm going to be, oh Christ, I'm going to have that Dan Reeves 1996 thing that I keep talking about. It's a lame duck season and it's just going the wheels are as bad as this season is. And you say it can't get any worse. Next year could get worse. It could be. I think we have to also dive into what Colin talked about the psychology on the team of do the players think Shane and Dable are making the right decisions? So, and I never really thought about that until we brought that up, but they've got to be looking at the Saquon situation and the Xavier situation because they were friends with these people. These are people
Sure.
that they were leaders of captains on this team that they felt a connection to, and they see that this team that's one of the worst teams in the league now parted way with two players who are having MVP type seasons. Now, again, we could argue all day whether or not those were the right moves, but the players at a personal level are looking at that and must be thinking, my goodness, the company I work for doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So think of your employee. If you work for somebody who constantly did the wrong thing, you would be like, I got to get out of here. My employer is incompetent, and that's what might be going on here too, and why the Giants shouldn't be as bad as they are. There's more talent on this team than there was last year. There's more talent on this team than there was in 2022. But the record is getting worse and the fight is disappearing. And so why is that happening? And what Colin said might have a huge part of it. They may have signed their death knell when not just with Jones, but when the Barkley thing went down the way it did, and the McKinney thing went the way it did, because the players may have lost confidence in and that might be why another reason why these guys got to go is because the players don't have any confidence in their leadership. If you work for a company that you don't believe in the people at the top, that's going to affect you. We've all been there. I'm sure everyone listening has had a boss that you thought was an incompetent asshole, and you just couldn't wait to leave that place.
Right. There's the old saying, it's one thing to be thought of as being stupid and then opening your mouth and removing all doubt. That's partly where we're at. Hard Knocks was the opening of the mouth.
Yes, it was.
Unfortunately, we were part of Hard Knocks, and we were like, oh, cool, we get to see. The problem is what we saw at the time. Some people didn't like it. Some people immediately said it's a bad look. I wasn't there yet because I was kind of like, oh, I'm really kind of interested in what happens behind the scenes. I love the idea of building a team, even almost as much as the games being played. It's that whole concept of putting it together and bringing it together. I've always been interested in that. But then as the season played out, now you go back and those things that you kind of were like, oh, it's just a show. Now you're like, oh, shit. Like maybe that's really That's the bigger part. It was and I've used that term over and over again, it's the organizational arrogance that bugs me. It's just, you don't, you're living off the laurels of things that happen in 11, 7, 90, and 86. You are not living off anything that's happened since 2012. There's nothing you can hang your hat on to say we are this great organization. You have made multiple idiotic decisions. I still think the Mara involvement with Jones really was tied to Barkley. And I think you saw it again. I don't think he wanted to lose Barkley. And I think Daboll and Shane thought they could get by with Jones. And it was an easier contract to get in it because you can build in dead years that you can get rid of, where Barkley wasn't going to accept years that aren't going to, he wants to get paid. He knows what he is. Jones is going to take the inflated number, even if the other years, because that guy, he couldn't possibly believe he was going to be the long-term answer. So when you throw those numbers, that was to keep, Barkley needed to stay, somehow needed to stay. They knew that Mara was going to be pissed if Barkley was gone. And that's Mara's fault, I think. But again, I can't prove that. You can't prove that.
Yeah.
I can't prove that he didn't say sign Jones. But everything from Hard Knocks showed just how much he did not want to lose Barkley. And it was really bothering him. And you saw Shane kind of be arrogant about, the quarterback. But then it became, I'm not paying a quarterback $40 million to hand to a $12 million running back. Well, now you look like an idiot.
Right.
Your $40 million quarterback sucks, and you let the $12 million running back go. And I'm not saying we should have kept him, but that was the optics that you gave him. What's he doing? He's putting on an MVP type season with the Eagles. The worst case scenario, the tsunami of bad, has all come in. It's all come in.
That's what the key phrase that you just said. It's the worst case scenario. So if the Giants were 8-4, we would look back at Hard Knocks and go, that was a good thing. But we're 2-10. So you and I talked about this when we watched Hard Knocks. There were times where it almost felt like Shane was kind of pushing Mara out of the room, like,
right.
Like Mr. Magoo, it's time to go. Well, Mr. Magoo, again, confirmation bias, looks back at that and says, push me out of the damn room. You're the one who
look what
created
happened.
this situation. So I think moving forward, this Hard Knocks is a warning sign to the other 31 teams in the league. You better not air your laundry in public like that, because it can come and bite you in the ass. The tragedy / comical situation / whatever you want to call it thing about Hard Knocks is this. Some people will agree with this, some people won't. Everything that could have gone wrong for the Giants has gone wrong, and you can look back at Hard Knocks and mock them for it at this point. So some people, there was a thread this morning that somebody said drafting Neighbors was incredibly stupid. Now, you can make an argument why Neighbors should have been drafted. You can make an argument why the quarterback should not have been drafted. But in hindsight, it looks like, as of today, and again, December 7th, and we may have a different conversation 3 years from now. Who knows what Neighbors will be then and what the other quarterbacks will be then. But right now, players are, it looks like, what a lot of people had said on the website, saying, who cares if you've got a wide receiver? It's what you said. You made a great analogy about what do you call him, a Ford Pinto at quarterback? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You had the Ford Pinto at quarterback throwing, what did you say, throwing?
To get a Ferrari outside.
Yeah. So, and there are other people on the website who had a problem with that when they drafted him. But you can make the argument. You can see why, again, because you don't believe in the other quarterbacks and you do believe in the wide receiver. However, everything that's happened, and the same thing with Barkley, the same thing with McKinney, did you really want to, would you rather have an impact pass rusher, i.e. Burns, or a safety who has been kind of a bit up and down? People don't want to admit this too, but McKinney was kind of up and down as a player.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Barkley was kind of up and down as a player because of injuries. So there was a rationale, but everything that could, Shane's got to be sitting in his office right now going, what else can go wrong that makes me look like an idiot? Because that's kind of what's going on right now. And it's almost like, people have talked about this for years. It's almost like this team has been jinxed or cursed. It's almost like we all said, dear God, if we can just beat the Patriots in
Yeah,
the
we're paying
Super
for that.
Bowl, I'll accept anything. And it looks like we're still whatever prayers we put out there at that moment are still coming back to haunt us, because it looks like this franchise is cursed at this point.
So here's a piece that, as you were talking, that I started to think, here's another reason why I think maybe Shane and his overall staff deserves to come back and Dayball doesn't. If you go back to Hard Knocks and you look at their discussion of the draft, and they're talking to John Mara, they're talking to Steve Tisch. He's got his stuff up on the board. If you remember, it's on the whiteboard, and there's some stuff on the sides. And they say, if this happens, if this happens. If you look at the way he kind of planned out the thing, he nailed pretty much how everything was going to go in front of him. And on the players that they were very interested in, the guys that they were even considering, they're all good players.
Including the tight end.
I was going to say that. All three quarterbacks, they had Bowers up there. That guy has been whatever. Alt was up there, but even though they probably weren't going to go offensive tackle, they had him there. Then they had the receivers, and they pretty much nailed it. That's the part that I think works very negatively for Brian Daboll. Shane nailed the way the draft was going to go and who the players were and who they wanted and why they would want them, where they would want them, and whatever. All of them were considered really good. Daboll was all gung-ho out. If you take out Daniels and I assume Williams and definitely May, although they never really said his name about we want May. He did say it about Daniels.
But we know they did.
But we know they did.
We know they did. They
Especially when they did the whiteboard breakdown.
Yeah.
But from there, who did he want? He wanted Neighbors. He wanted them. Well, you got them. And guess what? Your offense sucks. Of all the things, Shane's his part of the draft piece and the way they slotted it was really, he had it planned. He had the players. Daboll was the voice that said, give me the dog. And that's ultimately where they went. And you haven't done anything with it. You haven't been able to scheme him open. Even when Jones was the quarterback, Jones isn't hitting him. He's not getting open. And now that dog is biting you in the ass. We heard rumors about practice. You're not the only person who heard the rumor. I heard Skinner bring it up on his show that there were rumors that Neighbors dogs it in practice, and now he's getting dinged in practice where he misses time out of nowhere. He practices and then suddenly doesn't.
Yeah, you notice he's missing practice late in weeks now. There's a trend.
Seems to be.
The thing that you just said is something really critical. So Daboll loves Neighbors, but it doesn't seem to be reciprocated.
Agreed.
It doesn't seem. Yeah, I don't think Neighbors thinks that much of Daboll, and I
don't think he respects him for sure. I don't think he respects Daboll as the authority piece to him.
He seems to throw him under the bus quite a bit after games. So
without question,
I don't. That's not a good look either. So my problem with Shane is this. Okay, I can come up with the reasons to keep Shane, but my big problems with Shane right now are this: the Daniel Jones decision, how they handled Saquon Barkley. I'll even throw in little things like, why didn't you trade Ojulari? Why didn't you look to trade Slayton? But they can't seem to be able to draft an offensive line. Evan Neal still, again, Colin talked about this. He's right. We all talked about this. I mean, Evan Neal looked like as sure a thing as there was. And for whatever reason, to me, that's still one of the biggest mysteries. I have no idea, but the guy, he's a bust. And why that is beyond me at this point, but that's a huge black eye for Shane at this point.
Yeah.
Again, he's got to feel cursed. I mean, because everybody had Evan Neal as their top tackle in the draft, and a draft that had three really good offensive linemen,
right?
And he quote unquote fell into their laps. They took Thibodeau, but the Schmitz pick looks bad now, and so and then Shane brought Daboll in, so Shane has got these negative hits happening to him too. We can talk about some of the good things that he's done, and like you said, there are things in Hard Knocks that said, well, he's not an idiot. He seems to be able to evaluate some guys, but for whatever reason, some of these guys haven't panned out. But there's enough there. There's enough fodder there for someone who doesn't like him to say he's made too many mistakes too. So,
Sure.
um,
And a lot of them are tied to the offensive line. Almost every one of his offensive line picks have, I mean, even JMS is regressing badly right now.
Yeah, I don't. Again, that's another one. Again, there are people like Cy who said he had athletic limitations, but most centers have athletic limitations. That's why they play center. That's one of the reasons why people put people at center. One is they don't have long arms, and the other one is they don't have, you know, and that's why a lot of guards play guard and don't play tackle. But he shouldn't be this bad. And again, I don't think you can blame the coaching at this point because we brought in a new offensive line coach who worked wonders with the Raiders, and our guards are playing all right now.
Right.
So I don't.
Well, it's really hard to coach correct Vita Vea basically picking you up and carrying you like a freaking backpack all the way into the backfield and dropping you on your back. There's not much you can coach out of that. He's not as functionally strong as you would like to be. Like when you are a center and you're somewhat undersized, he's not huge for a center.
Right.
You got to have almost that wrestling strength, and he doesn't have that, and he doesn't have the redirect quickness with his feet.
That's what Cy talks about.
He gets tied up. Yeah, but you're right. I mean,
but Sean O'Hara didn't have that stuff either.
True.
I mean, that's what I mean.
He had a little bit more anchor though. He was a little more stout.
Yeah. Well, I remember people on the website wanted to get rid of Sean O'Hara because they can bull rush him and he's not very strong.
Well, didn't we move on from O'Hara? I might be flipping the order. Did we move on from O'Hara to Boss?
Yes.
To Boss. Yeah.
So anyway, who was a big guy. So, but again, things have gone wrong. Enough things. My gut tells me Shane's going to be back but I don't know. And again, I told you, I've heard two separate things. I've heard people say one's gone. I've heard three separate things. I've heard somebody say both are gone. I've heard somebody say one is gone. You know, the coach is gone, and others say the GM is gone. So I don't know what's going. I don't know what's going to happen right now. All I know is this, and I know we're repeating ourselves this time. This isn't working. We are so bad right now that the fan base right now, I think, is so beaten down that sometimes we lose sight about how bad this team is right now. It's just not even competitive right now. It's just, I mean, the fact that we go to Germany and we lose to the Panthers. We can't beat Dallas ever, even when they play their backup quarterback and half their team isn't playing. We're probably going to lose the Saints this weekend, and it could be ugly. And people are still going to say, well, the injuries. Well, the injuries weren't an issue until lately. We weren't a horribly injured team, other than Andrew Thomas being out. We haven't been a real beat up team. Compare with other teams, we haven't been that really beat up. So
right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Dallas has 4 wins or 5 wins.
Didn't we give them their 5th win? I don't know. I'd look it up.
Yeah. The reason I say that is because of their wins, 2 of them are us.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
they
you know what I mean?
Again.
Like they're a bad team. Let's not pretend that they're not. They allowed 40 plus points to the Saints early in the season. The Saints
can't score, and we can't score against them.
And the Saints lost the game to the Eagles at home because the Saints couldn't put up more than, I think they had like 13 points in that game. Philly barely scored. I think Philly had like 15 or 16 points in the game. It was but New Orleans couldn't score, but they put 40 on Dallas. Baltimore put 40 on Dallas.
We gave them their only home win. Yeah, they're 5-7. They're 5-7.
Okay, so 2 of their 5 wins are us.
Yeah.
And one other win is Washington, where I don't know how the hell Washington lost that game to the beat up Cowboys team. So if you think about it, 3 of the Cowboys wins came from their own division. Another reason for us why winning some of your own division games is very helpful, because you just don't know. We can't even do that. We can't even play bad teams and win.
Well,
I'm sorry. No. It's fine.
Dable can't win in the NFC East. This has been a 3-year problem for him. And the only team he was able to beat were the Commanders, who now they swept us. So, and they look like they're going to be better for us moving forward. So we have a head coach who can't win division games. So
that's not good.
That's not good. I mean, look at the coaches we've had. I mean, you and I are older guys, but I don't think we ever had a head coach we've gone through head coaches, but Dan Reeves, even Ray Hanley weren't this bad against the division. Ray Hanley won division games. Davo
Yeah.
can't beat bad teams in the division. Like you said, Dallas isn't good this year. Their defense was a train wreck. We go in down there and we play them, and we gave up 6 sacks, and Locke is hit 40% of the time he drops back to pass, and we make them look like an elite defense again. Micah Parsons is running all over the place. We don't seem to know.
Right.
You'd think our game plan would be, where's Micah Parsons, and that's the guy we got to focus on. But no, let's let him run right by us. Like you said, Evan Neal's chasing a guy.
That was so bad. That was so bad. But even if you want to take that game out, you just go back to the first Dallas game. That's at home for us.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything. We went into that game. I remember you and I having this conversation, and your biggest fear was like, oh my God, here we are. We're going in. We got another guy we're pulling off the street to be the kicker. You watch, it's going to come down to a kick, and what happened? Our kicker makes every freaking kick they enter, but because we can't score touchdowns, it doesn't matter, and we still lose a close game.
Right.
But at home, anyway.
And then compare that to the Dan Reeves teams, who were not good, and like, other than the '93 team, and we go in, we're playing a Dallas team that was at that time a perennial. I mean, Dallas's offensive line during the '90s was elite. I mean,
absolutely.
They were like, you looked at them and they were. I mean, that team was so good. They made Barry Switzer look like a good coach for a while.
Right.
But then Dan Reeves would go in and play Dallas and either upset them or keep the game close. So they're, with
Dave Brown as your quarterback.
With Dave Brown as your quarterback and no wide receivers, we had a decent offensive line and a decent defense, but we were in those games, and we would upset. I mentioned this before, like the Tito Wooten play where but you would have, the fullback would be the hero of the game. But our Davo can't beat the NFC. We used to have coaches that couldn't beat certain teams in the NFC East. We talked about the Fossil, for whatever reason, always beat the Eagles. He just
right.
And Coughlin had problems beating the Eagles, which was weird. But Davo can't beat anybody in the division now. So what are you hanging your hat on with him? I'd like to say bring him back, but anyways, we could.
Yeah. So, a couple things. We are going to try to keep these a little bit tighter, but looking ahead, let's assume actually, I'm not going to say it. You brought up retread for a coach. Is there a retread coach that has not been discussed prominently that you think could be? Because I do have one in mind now after you talked earlier.
I'm gonna lobby for the guy that everyone seems to be, no, dear God, no, because he proved he couldn't be a head coach before. I would seriously look at bringing Spags back as a coach. And the reason I would say is 2 things. One, we've already seen that sometimes, again, Bill Belichick is what was the number 1 example. Sometimes the first destination for a coach doesn't work out. The other thing is this is where my subjective bias is feeding into this and may not be good. I am so tired of having a horrible defense that I can't stand it. And this has been going on. At some point, I'm going to post on the website how many defensive coordinators we've gone through since the Super Bowl. And we've talked about the Super Bowl defense the last 2011 defense wasn't good either. They got hot in the playoffs, but they weren't good either. We have been so bad. And when I watch Kansas City, I always come across how well coached they are on defense. And part of me says, Spags, the Giants know Spags. Spags knows the Giants. He's learned a lot under Reed. He would be a safer pick. So we're talking retreads. There are a lot of guys out there that aren't retreads. Again, if they want to roll the dice again and say that. But in terms of retreads, I think the one guy that's not getting enough attention, because when I watch Kansas City right now, it's their defense for the last couple of years, to me, that's been carrying that team.
So I'm going to say a guy that I originally, if somebody else mentioned it months ago, and I was like, no. But now you were saying something earlier. I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I'm kind of thinking If Shane stays, then I do think you need to bring a coach who's coached before.
Mm-hmm.
I think Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator of Pittsburgh, becomes an option here because we very well may be taking one of those quarterbacks that's on Pittsburgh right now as a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Also, pay attention to the game this weekend. Derek Carr is going to be possibly available to anybody as well because the Saints cap situation is so bad. They're going to have to get rid of players, and even getting rid of them doesn't necessarily free up cap space. It just takes up less cap space, if that makes sense. They're going to lose money no matter what. But in order to get rid of them long term, they're going to have to get rid of some of these guys. And I think Carr will probably be one of them. So he's a guy we might be looking at too. But I think Arthur Smith, you come in, and if he can do what he's done with Pittsburgh's offense, which is not that great, by the way. I mean, they've got a decent tight end. Their offensive line is not good. Their receivers outside of Pickens, and Pickens is a head case. So if you can work with Pickens, then you probably could work with Neighbors. I think you could get something with, and Smith has experience. His teams weren't bad. They were very consistent. They just had nothing at quarterback, and they struggled to build those wins. I think if you bring him in, get a good defensive coordinator to come in. Now you've got something. If Shane can pull the draft off and get a good, it needs to be a quarterback that can move around because Smith likes his quarterbacks. He likes to run and he likes that option. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. If I was looking at retreads besides Vrabel, which I would love it to be Vrabel, I think that's Arthur Smith is somebody to consider.
Well, there's the one thing to keep in mind is something Colin brought up too, is sometimes you have to wonder if, and this argument supports what you're getting at, and works against what I'm getting at. Sometimes you have to look at who the coach has to work with, and we talked about Ben Johnson in Detroit, the offensive coordinator. They're loaded, so they're really innovative and they're really exciting. But Colin says, well, how much is that to do with the personnel? It's a really good question. And again, with Spags, he's got a lot of really good players on that Kansas City team. What does that translate? So sometimes you have to wonder, like, do you look at the coach who does more with less, or do you look at the coach that is just knocking out of the park, but a lot of that might be due to the personnel? So there's that variable.
That's
and
a good question.
Variable is what we already talked about is, do you go with a retread or do you go and try swing for the fences and get the next young coordinator who most of the time those guys don't pan out. But if you do get somebody like San Francisco got, you're gold. And that's we're hoping we did that with Shermer and McAdoo and Judge and Jesus Christ, there's so many of these guys now. Spag, Dable, and it just hasn't worked out. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, and I know that's where you're thinking, but I think that's what Mara must be thinking is, I can't take another risk of swinging for the fences here because I'm running out of at bats, and that's why I think they may go with a more experienced person. It's too bad that there isn't somebody like a younger Belichick who really wanted to come here, or a really much younger Cowher, or things had worked out where Sean Payton would have been available, because Sean Payton has a history here. I mean, if Sean Payton was here, we feel a lot better about our situation. But we missed the boat on that. We missed the boat on Harbaugh, and I don't think Mara would have gone for Harbaugh anyway.
If you look at the history of the Giants, we've done both, even during successful times. She had Ray Perkins, and Perkins it took a little while. And honestly, it didn't really turn until Sims was able to play somewhat. But even he was injured a lot. It was LT that changed the course of where that went. But then Perkins got the opportunity to replace Bear Bryant. So we went in staff and we brought Parcells up.
Who was a big gamble. That was a big gamble.
And he struggled that first year, but that also, you had Parcells and Belichick. I mean, talk about Hall of Fame coaches on the same freaking staff.
Belichick was like an intern at that point.
He was the young,
he was a young whiz kid,
And he became the DC.
Yeah.
We went that path though with Parcells leaving. They elevate Hanley, and that was an utter failure. They go outside of that and they go get a very established Dan Reeves,
which
That
looked great the first year. And then
as he morphed everything into New York Broncos,
the Denver,
and brought everybody over, but that failed. Then we went young guy who had a connection to the previous Giants. So we always kind of find that connection, and we bring Fossil in. That starts out well, then it kind of comes down. Then we get our quarterback. We make us kind of a wild run to the Super Bowl, pushing my chips into the middle of the table. We're all in. We make the Super Bowl. We get blown out. That peters out. And then we go get the experienced previous guy, but also who had a connection to the Giants. This is why I still think that no matter what happens, if they go this route, they're going to make a phone call to Belichick. Experienced, tied to the team, but it also falls into your piece. If they don't go Belichick, then Spags makes sense. Experience.
I think he makes a lot of sense
tied to the Giants
because of the tie-in,
and that's how they do stuff.
That's how they do stuff.
Even Joe Judge, that had to have been a conversation with Belichick, who recommended him. There's no way they randomly picked Joe Judge, who's a no name on that Patriot staff, without Belichick giving them the okay.
Well, Belichick might have had a conversation with Mara about Dable too.
I think that is very true, because that was part of the lawsuit of Flores, who basically said that's a really bad look for the Giants. Honestly, I would love to see them come out and say, listen, we want to talk to Brian Flores again. We feel really bad about the way things went last time, and we really want to sit down and talk to you. This is going to sound weird, and I hope it doesn't come off that way. I kind of almost think the Giants really do need to start looking. You shouldn't always pick somebody who looks the same as some of the people you picked before. Just going to say that. Okay. I think you've avoided. There is a knock by some people that the Giants avoid black quarterbacks. I don't believe that to be true, because we've had backups, but they always believe the face of the franchise looks like Eli. If you want to tie it to race, great. I think it's more they think he's just the prototypical New York Giant, 6'4", going to be quiet, going to be the guy who's going to be all team and not versus the personality. I don't always think it's race, but I do think that was a really bad look at what happened with the Flores thing when it came out. Now, I think he also, with issues with other teams, it was a little weird, but I don't think he's wrong, though, because quite frankly, he was the more qualified candidate. But if you're going to go defense, you got to bring him in as at least for an interview. You got to.
It depends on how
upset, if he's willing.
It depends on how upset ownership is with the lawsuit. So some people hold grudges. So we'll see.
That's true.
The only thing, and I haven't really followed that closely. The only thing about the Flores thing was he didn't come off looking good either.
True.
There was stuff in there that you were like, really? So I didn't think anyone came off looking good in that whole situation. So some people hold grudges. I can see the Maras being one of those teams that hold grudges. People that hold grudges. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
we'll see. I don't think I've always had a problem, and we should cut this because we've already gone longer than we should. I've always had people who say that the Maras are being racist because they've had Jerry Reese as general manager who ran the whole whole darn thing. I just don't I don't think that. I think they've had the biggest issue, if you believe in that, with the quarterbacks, is the Giants have had 3 quarterbacks who have been now 4 who have been there a really long time. So you had Phil Simms was there for Christ, what was it, 12 years? Wow. So
79 to 93.
Yeah, even longer than that. So Manning was there forever. Eli was there forever. Kerry Collins was there for a decent period, and Daniel Jones was there for a decent period. If you look at some other teams like the Cleveland Browns or the Commanders / Redskins, and how many quarterbacks they've gone through in a 20-year period, it's night and day difference.
Sure.
So it'll be more. Let's put it this way: what quarterback are they scouting the hell out of right now?
Yeah,
about right now. So it's Sanders. And I told my wife. My wife can't stand Dion, and I mentioned that they're scouting Dion's son, and she's like, "Oh God, no, not Dion's son," because she doesn't know anything about college football. All she remembers is Deion Sanders, and she can't stand Deion Sanders. So I started going prime time.
If if you wanted to grease the skids about bringing him on board and you wanted to change some of the excitement of the fan base.
Yeah, Sanders would make a lot of
Well,
sense on
yeah, but
that
I'm
one.
going one step further than that. If you really wanted to do something kind of off the charts,
Oh, you mean hire his father?
you bring dad in and
Oh,
you draft the
God.
son. I'm not saying do it. I don't want that. But I'm saying if you really wanted to change the perception,
Yeah.
especially even in the league among players, you would make players suddenly want to come
No,
here.
you're right. You're right. But
I'm
can you
not
see
saying do it because I don't think he's a good coach, but
again, it's not a race thing, but do you see the Maras doing that?
I can't because
I
he's just
can't
such a
see them doing it.
personality.
No.
But can you imagine how funny would it be if we did that and you drafted Sanders and Sanders brings Pat Shermer as his offensive coordinator? I mean, let's get the band together. Let's go find who do we have as defensive coordinator? Bring him in. I mean, I could easily see it happening. They're spending a whole lot of time going to Colorado.
Yes, they are. Yeah, we
And
talked about that.
I
Well,
think,
there's two quarterbacks right now that if they're gonna look at quarterback, it looks,
but we're not. But have you heard of one word of us going to Miami?
no.
We seem to
But
be locked in on one guy so far.
yeah, and they tend to wear their heart on their sleeve, so that makes so that there's probably interest there, but there also there are been times when this franchise has tried to hide their interest by feigning interest someplace else,
True.
not showing interest
Yeah, we think we're really smart. We're not.
So
Here's the other caveat, though. We spoke to the Colorado team. I mean, you had Brown speaking.
Yeah.
You had Brown speaking to the team. Next thing you know, the next time out, Shane's out there. You've got a bunch of people. I'm telling you, don't. If that happens, I'm going to be the first person who said it. Like, there's something odd going on with us in Colorado, and I think they know for sure. At the very least, they know they need Daddy Dion to buy in, or he could easily talk his kid out of coming here.
Yeah. The other thing, last thing I want to bring up for this show too is with Shane, and I've been thinking a little bit about this too. Remember, there's a lot of people in the building now who either are considered up and coming possible GM prospects like Brown.
Yep.
There's also a couple of people in the building who have actually been general managers before. We've got the guy from the Titans, Crowden, and the guy whose name escapes me, who was down in Miami, he's been tied at the hip with Shane when they scout. I can't believe I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
but there are a couple people in the building right now. I'll try to see if I can find it while I'm doing this. There are a couple of people in the building now that if they wanted to move away from Shane, that have been with other teams and might be getting interviews as well too. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just bringing it to attention.
Sure,
Are people in there are because we were talking about in the last few years. Well, wow, the Giants are putting together quite the personnel department here because look at all the ex GMs and personnel directors they're bringing in. So, I just throw that out too.
Well, you're looking at that real quick. Yeah. Just to help some people, some corrections. Please stop bringing up the 24 draft as being this monumental draft that Joe Shane has had for a couple reasons. I'm not saying it might not develop that way, but if you keep pointing to like, look how many starters we have, I'm going to tell you there's a reason why. We don't have a lot of good players. A lot of these guys are starting because they don't have a choice at the moment. Don't just use that. I hate it when people use stats or some other thing in a down season to justify. And I go back to 2014. So many people on BBI, elsewhere with Giants fans, totally loved our offense. Oh, our offense is this and this and this. And, it's because it's the defense. We just got to fix the defense. And I kept thinking, you're using a down season to justify. You're using games where we were trailing a lot. So we were throwing the ball a ton and we're getting garbage yards and garbage touchdowns. Never use anything in a bad season as justification for or against something. Use common sense and look at the totality of what you're dealing with. The Giants have a lot of young players playing right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that we had a spectacular draft and they're all going to be great. We don't have an option. Tracy's starting because basically Singletary wasn't doing the job as well as they wanted to, and he got nicked a little bit, and Tracy started to play. But we only have 3 running backs, really. I mean, it doesn't matter. Johnson's playing because Bellinger has disappeared. And Manhurst is only there to block. So Johnson was playing in, but he didn't do a lot early on. And Neighbors should be a superstar. Even with a bad quarterback, he should be breaking some long stuff. That's his speed. Have you seen it translate to the field? No. So
We'll have
don't.
to see. Yeah, you can make arguments that some of those guys are playing have promise, but like a guy like Tyler Newbin, I expected more of so
Well,
far.
but again, my point is just because they're starting, and I'm not saying they're good or bad, just don't use it as a justification to say it was a great draft.
Oh yeah,
We don't know that yet.
well, remember we thought Bellinger was going to solve the tight end issue when he was a rookie, and look where he is now. Now he's an afterthought. So you just don't know. And people have said this for decades. You can't judge a draft until 3 or 4 years.
3 years. Yeah.
It's Dennis Hickey who
Hickey.
was
Okay. Yeah.
So Dennis Hickey was a GM down with the and I said Crowden. I mean Cowden.
Cowden. Yeah.
So
yeah.
we got a couple of guys in the building that might get interviewed. And of course, if Mara might still think highly of Kevin Abrams, who, if Mara, the one thing, and I know I'm going to scare people with this, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Mara really does have confirmation bias after this season, he might, you could go back and he could revert back to form and say, I'm going to go with what I wanted originally and have Kevin Abrams be the general manager of this team. And that's who I really kind of wanted after Gettleman left, but I convinced myself to look outside the building. So there's a few people inside the building that they could look at.
That would be really bad. If they did move on from Shane but stayed in house, you got to give it though. You got to give Brown the opportunity. Everything that he's shown, everything you hear him talk, he's an up and coming guy. You can't,
and I'm not disagreeing with that. I just don't know, again, with anybody that's in the building, I don't know what that's based on right now because it's part of what's happened. So I think right now everybody's got the stink of losing on them right now, rightfully or wrongly. I just don't know why you would say anyone's doing a good job right now because of the results on the field. So, if you're going to criticize Shane for the draft picks and criticize Shane for the free agent signings, doesn't Brown bear some responsibility?
Sure, absolutely. No, you're right.
I know a lot of people immediately. I think Brown looks like a cool guy. I think he seems like a nice guy and he looks like a cool guy. And I think people get caught up on that. I'm a results oriented person.
Sure.
So
sure.
I don't mind if the guy's an asshole if he does his job right. And that's,
That's true.
Bill Parcells was not a nice guy,
No.
Tom Coughlin wasn't a nice guy. I mean, his
family. Belichick definitely is not. Belichick is definitely not.
So it's like the old westerns. You want to bring in the guy, the tough guy that does the job, and it's like the movie Unforgiven. You bring in the guy,
right?
Take care of business, and he takes off. So, anyways, on that note, I think we've run our course on
sure.
That,
so this coming game, anything or anybody in particular you're paying attention to, or something, a theme you're looking to see, or is it more just like, I know this is a car wreck and I just have to watch the car wreck? And
I think there's an opportunity here for some young guys who wouldn't normally play to make a statement and show that, hey, I've got some heart and I've got some pride, and I don't care if the stars above me are playing like crap. Football's football. I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna have fun, and I'm gonna show my skill set. So I'm actually curious to see if some of the young guys who haven't had a chance make a statement. That's what I'm looking at, because I don't see anything else in here to really hang my hat on with this thing. The quarterback situation, Drew Lock's not going to be here next year, so I don't care if he looks great or he doesn't look great, because he's not going to be here next year. So,
right.
So
I'd like to see Hyatt play over Slayton, or if Neighbors is out, then Dahill should be on the start, because you just got to see what you got in him. He's got to get playing time, or we're literally going to be going into next year going, we can't count on this guy at all. So we got another hole at wide receiver. So I want to see him play. I like to see Dulwich, who we just signed at tight end. He's a good pass receiver. I don't think he's much of a blocker. And if I remember correctly, he had injury issues, and I thought some of them were concussions issues coming out of college. So we have to go back and look. I might be wrong on that.
Hamstring issues when he was with Denver.
The Broncos.
I don't know what the concussions were. I don't know if he's going to be ready yet. I mean, I don't know if we'll see him or not. I mean, we could. He might have to play. I don't know.
Was he UCLA? Did he go to UCLA?
I'm not sure.
I'd have to go back and look. But he's got hands. He's a good receiver. He's definitely a good receiver. I've seen him play for the Broncos a few times last year. He's a good receiver. He hasn't played much.
Who's going to be playing defensive tackle for us? I mean, because everybody's out. So
this is Jordan Riley's opportunity to show whether he should be there or not be.
That's what I mean. There are guys like that this is it. This is your opportunity, and he may look awful, but this is his opportunity.
And Chapman too, right?
Chapman, the same thing, but
undersized and playing a lot.
Who else is there even on? I mean, they're gonna have to bring somebody up from the practice squad. They may have to bring up like Casey Rogers or somebody.
Nothing screams really good run defense than a really undersized defensive tackle playing.
Not only undersized, the most undersized guy. I mean, it's as small as you can get. Real quick, let me just see on the defensive line because Davidson's out too. Holy crap! I mean, they may have to play this Corey Dirt.
Well, you've got Watts. Is he healthy? I think Watts
on injured reserve.
Oh, well, yeah, forget that then. Yeah, well, wow, we are really
bad. I mean, they may have to play this Corey Durden guy, and then on the practice squad, let me just see who's on the practice squad besides Rogers.
I like Rogers in training camp. He showed some flashes. Not that he was ready to play, but maybe we could put Evan Neal out there. Let's see if he can play defensive tackle. He can't play offensive tackle. Like, give it a shot. I mean, you just got to stand in the way. He clearly shows he knows how to run back towards the quarterback.
We have Elijah Garcia on the practice squad too. So
former Arizona Cardinal, I believe.
Oh boy, this is not.
It's gonna get. And our linebackers are like, it's so bad that they probably would have activated Johnson, but I don't think they can. I think you need the spaces for other people.
Now remember the secondary is kind of beat up too because
Banks is out.
And then Andrew Phillips is kind of dinged up and he's questionable. And then they're going to play, but Newbin and Belton are hurt at safety. Jesus and the linebackers are beat up because Bobby is out and one of the other linebackers I thought has been dealing with something.
McFadden's been having a back off and on. I don't know if that's still bothering him, but
yeah, I don't think he's on the injury report. But there's been other people, and
it's so bad. It is
bad. It's bad.
I mean, I know it's a bad season, but I mean, it's so bad that way, and injuries pile up. And I know a couple of people kind of try to jump on me when I posted, just saying back to what I had said before. The Dayball clearly mentioned multiple times that Newbin and Neighbors were injured in practice. They were not injuries from before. They were new injuries, and it happened in practice. And when it's soft tissue injuries in practice, I have a real big question on that late in the year. And Neighbors, as you pointed out, this is multiple times now where all of a sudden he just doesn't practice.
Yeah, he'll practice on Wednesday, and then on Thursday or Friday he's out.
And he seems to have no problem, and this would not happen under a Bill Belichick regime. He has no problem telling people about his injury whenever they ask him. He even talked about his groin being bothering him back to college, coming out of college. It's been bothering. He's had to manage it.
Yeah.
What organization wants you telling everybody that?
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is going to play in the category of, if you're going to get rid of Dayball, this is going to be another check over here. You got guys kind of doing their own thing that they shouldn't be doing. And I don't think he's not anyway. So as far as the game goes, you those are yours. I want to see Hyatt, whoever we throw on the defensive line. Offensive line wise, I hope Kubis is active, but he probably won't be just because we need multiple tackles. But I would like to see him get some playing time at some point here in the near future. And then Eric Gray, you're going to have to play a little bit, because if you're going to basically stake a spot on this roster, it can't be as a kick returner because you suck. So it either has to be as a running back or we need to move on.
Right.
I guess I'm more disappointed now as you said, there's more talent on this team. The problem is it doesn't. It's like we have a bunch of talented puzzle pieces. Unfortunately, they're all from different puzzles.
Well, and the talent thing is now been overtaken by the injury thing. So, which
True.
I hope Mira and everyone realizes you can't blame the injuries up until this point, but you can start to say it's going to be a problem moving forward. But that's not why we're 2-10. The injuries are not why we're 2-10, but it might be why we end up 2-15. So can you imagine how bad? Can you imagine how bad the Ravens Giants game is going to be, and how bad the Eagles Giants game is going to be? Assuming Philadelphia has something to play for.
But even if they don't,
games are just going to be rock bottom for this franchise. I can't imagine how many rushing yards this team is going to give up to those two teams.
Even if the Eagles don't have anything to play for, I think right now their backups overall are better than our team that we're going to put out there because they're a team. We got pieces. We're pulling people and just throwing them out there going, you just know that when the ball snaps, start moving.
Well, by that time, again, people are going to say injuries, but by that time, you're going to have lots of people on IR.
Sure.
And the Giants are going to be playing guys that shouldn't even be on the roster. And people are going to say, well, you said the Giants roster. I'm talking about the roster when it was in September and October. The Giants roster in September and October is better. If you go back and look at who was playing offense and defense for the Giants in 2022, you'd be amazed at how bad.
Oh my God, yeah.
Those guys aren't even in the league.
We're talking from week. Sorry, we're talking from week 1.
Yeah.
When when we rolled out against the Titans, Chris Myrick. We had we're playing
there are guys that on in the secondary at wide receiver you go down at linebacker. People forget we had that was it Crowder at linebacker?
Yeah.
Awful players. And so people forget how bad that team was. And this team is better than last year's team, but it doesn't look it. And people are going to say, "Are you on crack?" But if you were drafting or picking these players up, and I will say this too, look at how many players this team has lost that we were okay with, and now are doing great on other teams. Right. So, and it's not just Saquon, but it's other players now too. So that's kind of an indictment on the coaching staff too.
If you look at history real quick, if you look at the Giants under Fossil, 2000 we make the Super Bowl, very surprise run, make the Super Bowl. 2001 we were there, at the end of the year, whatever. 2002 we make another playoff run, and actually could have, who knows what might have happened
right
after the 49er game, but that was a very beat up team, by the way, though, at that point.
Right.
In 2003, the wheels came off. There was obviously some, now looking back on it, things you hear, there must have been some behind the scenes stuff too, because you were Super Bowl playoff within a 3-year span. Then you won 4 games.
That season was awful.
Yeah.
That season was awful.
4 games. On the pace we're on right now, that would be double the wins that Daboll will have this year.
Yeah.
And if you won 6 the year before, keep in mind, 6 out of 17, where we played teams like the Patriots, who were worse than us because we beat them, the Jets, who were pretty shitty, and they beat us. There was a lot of bad football.
And Fossil left before the end of the year, didn't he? In 2000, then
he announced because he knew he was being fired.
Right.
Yes.
That's how bad that year was.
Yes.
And this year is worse.
This year is worse. And like you said, like where we started, if you threw this as a chart, it's trending down. And it's trending down to the point that we beat Cleveland when they had Deshaun Watson and they couldn't score any points. And that game was still close later in the second half. We beat Seattle. And again, if we didn't block that field goal, who knows how that game ultimately might have ended. And that was our best game overall about how we played.
And you talked about how 2022, you thought, they got away with some early wins that made them look better than they are. But remember, even in the second half of the season, the Giants crushed the Colts. And again, look, there were games where we looked nowhere near what this team couldn't do what that team did then. And yet this team has more talent than that team did. Not now. Again, if people are going to say Jordan Riley's playing defensive tackle, I'm talking about when Dexter Lawrence was playing defensive tackle. So it's different.
So if you look to the other thing to me, why I think if one's going to go and one's going to stay, it's going to be Shane's going to stay and Dable's going to go. You can kind of see the Christmas tree every now and then behind my head. The red will show. What good teams have we beaten outside of the Ravens and maybe the Packers early in 22 under this regime? The good teams, when we play them, we lose. And we generally lose fairly decently, like you knew early on the game was over. And it's just been going down. We don't beat teams in our own division, and some of them aren't even that good. I mean, Washington is good, better this year, but they've won a miracle game against Chicago they should not have won. They lost to Dallas at home. We should have beaten them had we not had a kicker out from the second the game started. This team is just going down,
This
down
team can't
under
beat bad
Dable.
team, but it's worse than what you're saying. The team can't. You're saying the team can't beat good teams. This team can't beat bad teams now.
Well, now, but I'm saying even some of the wins, though, the bulk of the wins, you know what I mean? We stole them win, and I hate doing it now because I used to do it the other way too. When things are kind of there, you're like, we were so close. But now the history says, as Shane likes to say, the best indicator of future results is what you've seen in the past. And that's where we are right now. The past says we got lucky against some bad teams and we stole a couple of bad games, but we have yet to put together a string of quality play outside of the first 6-2. And even then it was a little sketchy, but I'm okay with sketchy when you're overmatched and your team is just smarter and consistent and you stay in there because that's how underdogs win. It gets worse though when you're stupid, which we were. Look what we did against the Steelers. The dumbest 2-point conversion play in the history of the game. I mean, Jim Zorn's going, see, I'm not that bad. So, like this is the kind of stuff that says you're just it's all bad.
There's nothing to hang your hat on. So,
well, enjoy, a beautiful holiday season with once again the Giants. No pressure. You're not going to be full of angst. You just take a nap, go out. Who knows?
Do some chores.
Go
shopping.
If you suffer from insomnia, watch the Giants offense. I promise you will be napping before the game is over. So, but if you want, leave us comments or messages. If there's things down the road you'd like to see us, do or talk about, or if there's guests are not always easy to be able to do, but if there's a type of guest, like I want more draft stuff or I want, let us know. We are going to keep trying to do stuff. And as we get towards the end of the season, it will all be about 25 and what's going to happen.
Right.
So
we'll have Cy on again soon. And
absolutely.
Like we've talked about having maybe doing some history stuff with some fan favorites like Matt. And so we'll do some fun things. So
nice. With that being said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch up with you again next week where we will recap the Giants' loss to the Saints and most likely Alvin Kamara's 3 rushing touchdowns and who knows, 200-plus yards. So appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.